All right, welcome everyone. Welcome those of you who are here live, and welcome to those who are watching the recording. Um, so we're almost done wrapping up another year of literature at our house. This is the 6th year of literature at our house, and next year will be the 7th year of literature at our house. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to chat a little bit about what we did during the year, because sometimes we start off with a plan during the year and things evolve, things develop. And so just to give you a sense whether you have been with us all year or you're new to literature at our house, to get a sense of what it is that we accomplished in each of our literature courses. And then I want to look ahead, talk a little bit about the plan for next year, the books for next year, and then maybe a couple of new things. Like one major new thing is, of course, we'll be switching over to Zoom rather than WizIQ, and there are a couple of other little smaller things. And then any big questions you have, any small questions you have, and I think we'll wrap up in 30 minutes or so. So you guys can keep me in the loop if you want to use a chat. I've got the chat box open if you want to immediately react to things, just like those of you who are students, you just respond to whatever's going on in the chat. I like the feedback loop. Otherwise, I think there is you can just unmute yourself and just jump in, or you might find a hand function where your hand gets raised. And I don't know how well I'll be able to see that. I'm not used to the format yet, but at the very least, just jump in anytime you like. Oh, Steve, I see your hand went up. Yeah, great. So you're.
Just see if you can see it.
Yeah, and I'm worried about it because I on my screen I see 4 participants and myself, and then I've got to scroll down to see the rest. So that's a little bit tricky. I'll have to figure that out. Okay, and I lowered your hand there. All right, so let's look back at what we accomplished, and let's see, Luke, I see you here. We'll start off with a high school, and this past year, let's see if I push a button. Nope. How about this button? Nope. Let's see if I push. There we go. Ooh, okay. I'll try again. All right. So you might maneuver the objects in your screen a little bit. I've got to, but what I have here on the screen are all the books that the high school students have read. Now, at the beginning of the year, I'd say we had about half of these planned, and over the course of the year, we added more. This past year was nominally the ancient history year of literature. So in the high school class, we started off with some pretty challenging texts of ancient history, like the Iliad, and we did a few plays, Aeschylus, Prometheus Bound. We did 2 Sophocles plays, Ajax and Philoctetes. We covered all the major playwrights. We did Medea by Euripides. And we also delved into other literature that might have had some connection in some way to, or might have been influenced by ancient literature, like Frankenstein, which it was conceived of as a modern Prometheus, or Ayn Rand's Anthem, which is a kind of futuristic dystopian seeing how the world becomes ancient again. And then we did some things that were not really connected to ancient literature, but were connected to maybe some themes from ancient literature. So, for example, we did the play Philoctetes, which has a conflict about success, achievement, versus being moral. Which one should you sacrifice your principles in order to achieve success? And then we read a 19th century novel by Balzac, Pere Goriot, which has a similar theme. And then with Frankenstein, we picked up Frankenstein because we just read Medea, and in both of those are tales of revenge. And so we're looking not just at the mythological influences, but at the thematic connections. And one of the last things that we read was the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is primitive, but was really interesting in how it lays the foundation for a lot of the different kinds of stories that we have, the whole hero's journey idea. Some of the assignments that we did, so all kinds of things. I think I'm just looking at a few of these. There were, for Anthem, there was a journal entry on that we did. For the Iliad, there was there was a reconceiving the conflict of Achilles versus Hector by imagining a different situation. I think Remy did one where there was a baseball game, or was that you, Luke? Yeah, was it Remy? Yeah, or Hector versus Achilles in baseball game. And then, in Pergorio, students wrote letters by Eugene back to his mom, describing the characters, the odd people that he met. And then we compared Medea and Frankenstein. And then the final major thing is each student is writing an essay currently, and we had a tutorial session where we were conceiving the idea for each individual student's essays. So there's a lot of, there are often options in the writing assignments. You got the option of a couple of different writing assignments, and then culminating in, for the maximum interest, for the maximum of what each student is going to take out of this class, the big essay, culminating essay, which is integrating several different works, is something that is driven by the student. So that's a bit of the high school year. Now, in junior high, let's see if I can click and go. And so we have Wyatt here in the junior high. So in junior high, also similarly ancient history year, and we started off with mythology, Edith Hamilton's mythology. Then we did the Odyssey, we did Antigone. We also did Philoctetes. I did Philoctetes both for the high school and the junior high. Enjoyed it so much with the high school students. I did it with the junior high. It was fitting. And then we did a couple of other plays that derived a little bit from that. So the Browning version derived from ancient mythology. So the Browning version by Terence Rattigan is a play surrounding the Agamemnon by Aeschylus, where that's a central feature, and there's some parallels. And then George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, of course, is a modern take on the Pygmalion myth. And then with 93, a Victor Hugo novel, there are some thematic similarities to Antigone, as many of the students picked up on. A few of the assignments that we did after doing the mythology, the students wrote their own myths. Then for the Odyssey, the students wrote their a reimagined movie treatment of the Odyssey. So if you were to write the basic plot of the Odyssey, but put it in a different setting, I think there was something like in ancient Egypt, or the Odyssey in Cold War Russia, or Cold War Eastern Europe. So that was one of them. Then there were a letter of writing a letter to a new student, you being a former student, about the two teachers, Andrew Crocker Harris and Frank, and describing each of those and warning that new student about the teachers that were coming up and what to watch out for. And then with Victor Hugo, describing a scene in a Victor Hugo kind of way with the powerful dramatic language. So picking out one of the scenes and being intensely dramatic about it. And then, of course, we do our favorite activities like crazy character combos, where we take two characters at random and find parallels and write assignments, paragraphs about those. So that's a little bit about the junior high. And for the upper elementary, I'm wondering if I could get Mrs. Miner, Rachel. Hi, would you share
Yes.
with us a little bit of how the year went?
We had an awesome time. Like you said, it's the ancient year. So we did also Greek myths. And of Byzantium is one, obviously, Byzantine Empire. So again, ancient. But then some of these that are from different periods. Oh, Golden Goblet also from ancient Egypt. So we explored things like, the Little Princess, which, is one of these characters that the students really were able to identify with in how many things changed over time, but how much control she had by interpreting what occurred in this novel for herself. So we also did the Write Your Own myth. We had had a really good time with Valentine's this year. So there were a lot of write a Valentine's from a bad guy, and so there were a lot of very well, it wasn't wishing people sweet happily ever afters, we'll put it that way. And we then did two books that are kind of new to Literature at our house. We did Where the Red Fern Grows, which was really interesting. Some of the students really have had that experience of loving an animal with your whole heart, and they really, really got into it. And then others are kind of like, not so much. So that was kind of a neat experience. And our last one is The First Two Lives of Lucas Kasha, which we just finished today. Yes, today. Oh no, yes, on Tuesday, on the makeup class on Tuesday, because today we started the semifinals, which students are really, really into, picking their favorite hero, their favorite villain, their favorite person to be a friend, their most exciting scene. And we ran long today because students are having a really good time. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I think that's a lot of our assignments and what we've been up to.
Awesome, Rachel. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right. So that's a bit about last year. And I guess I'll pause here for just a moment if there are any questions or thoughts, or anybody want to share anything. And feel free to either jump in or to type in the chat. I'll pause just for a moment here. Thanks, Luke. All right. And I see we have somebody else that's joined us. Hi, welcome aboard. Oh, hey, who's there?
This is Jenny. Sorry, I'm trying to turn my video on.
Sure. Let's see.
So I'm sorry I joined late, and one question I have is the discussion questions, and apologies if you've already touched on this. Mm-hmm. The discussion questions that you guys talk through in each class period, are those usually given to the child in advance to think through as they're reading the books? Or is that something where they just come to class and then you're posing the questions?
So primarily it's something that we do in class and discuss them in class rather than think about them beforehand. We often do have questions that are posed, but they are more plot or more anticipation questions. So at the end of every class, what I hope that the students have is a sense of, okay, we just went over all this stuff, and then here's some questions I'm looking for to have answered by the reading. So they're not questions, okay, after you do the reading, think about them, and come to class and have that prepared to discuss. Those I like to keep in class, but questions like, okay, so now these two characters, or let's see, let me think of something. Odysseus has just been offered by Calypso to stay with her for the rest of his life. What is he going to do? And so that type of anticipation question that is going to get the student to enjoy and care about what's going to happen when they read is that's that question versus a discussion question, where those I want to handle in class more. Does it make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. But I want to think a little bit more about why I like to handle those in class more. which I don't have a completely clear answer to myself right now. Okay, so let's, if I think of something more, I'll bring it in. All right, now let's go to looking ahead to next year. Okay. All right, so looking ahead to next year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the bunch of books that we have planned, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it's going to be organized, and maybe how there are some differences between the high school, the junior high, and the upper elementary. So first of all, I gotta get used to that. There we go. The high school class for next year. The high school, it's nominally the European history year of literature. And I conceived of the high school class, now this is going to be the 4th year I've doing, oh my goodness, the 4th year. So 3 years ago, and the high school class wasn't something that I initially started because my background is not in high school literature. My background for many years is upper elementary and especially junior high literature. But because a lot of students wanted to stick around, and I said, sure, I'll do a high school literature class. But I presented it as, I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants with this. I'm not going to often have curriculum really prepared. Sometimes I will be reading the book for the first time along with the students. And so far, it's worked out pretty well, sometimes better than others. Sometimes there's been a book that that wasn't so much fun. Sometimes the books have been great. So this is the first year back to the European history cycle, and I've done all 3 years in the cycle: the ancient history, the European history, and the American history sections. So what's happening now with next year of high school is I'll be coming into it with more familiarity and more of an understanding of having some things that I know are going to work, but still keeping some experimentation. So for example, Jane Eyre was a favorite, was one of the most successful books I taught, and I was reading it along with the students 3 years ago. And Steve, you might remember how much Sarah Beth enjoyed the novel. So that's definitely one that we are going to read, and we'll probably start the year with that one. Another one, Count of Monte Cristo, was one that everybody enjoyed, but I'm not sure that we're going to do that one. One of the lessons learned from doing that one is it's so long that it took up almost a third of the year, 1,500 pages. So rather than do the Count of Monte Cristo, we might fill it in with other things. So the way I'm still going to approach the high school class with, let's experiment and try things out. I didn't decide on Gilgamesh, for example, till last month. So there's still going to be that element of figuring out what the dynamic of the class is like, making discoveries, trying stuff out, but there will also be a little bit more, I know my way around high school students a little bit more, and I know my way around some of the literature that I think is going to work really well. So Jane Eyre, definitely. Othello is going to be a solid maybe. A Tale of Two Cities, maybe. The Man Who Laughs, almost certainly. Wild Duck, possibly. We the Living, I'm going down the list here. Pretty good chance. Family Happiness by Leo Tolstoy, very likely. And then there are a bunch of others. Oh, I'm losing my cursor here. I can't find my cursor anymore. That's one thing. There we go. So I've separated out the two chunks as the first half is the more likely, the second half is not as likely. So Don Carlos, Anna Karenina, Romeo and Juliet, Le Cid, Count of Monte Cristo, those will be options and candidates. And then there'll probably be others that might happen, come in. So one example is Crime and Punishment was one I started reading in the fall, and I said, wow, this seems like a perfect high school novel. So we tried Crime and Punishment out, and it worked okay, I think. It worked okay. All right. Any questions here about high school? Now, high school, it's the way I conceive it is primarily 10th through 12th grade. I conceive the junior high as 7th through 9th grade. 7th through 9th grade for junior high school, 10th through 12th grade. And a couple of quick things about the high school is it's fewer classes a week, twice a week rather than 3 times a week. And there is much more onus on the student to be prepared for class. Longer reading assignments, 50, 60 pages between classes. Often more writing assignments than the junior high class. So more responsibility overall. All right, so that's the high school. Now, junior high for next year. This will be the 3rd year now that I've taught this this set of books, and these are wonderful stories. They all capture something a little bit different that a junior high student will find meaningful. I think we'll start the year out. Can I get an annotation? Yeah. Oh, I can annotate. Let me try that. We'll start the year out likely with The Miracle Worker. And that's just an amazing, it's not European history, but it's such a good play about your relationship to a mentor, to a teacher. And then 12 Angry Men is one that's probably one of the most popular ones of any books that I taught, that I teach. Beowulf, it's not the original Old English poem, it's a novelized version. That's a lot of fun. And The Hunchback of Notre Dame, our first taste of Victor Hugo, and it's for somebody who's never read Victor Hugo before, it's the challenge is immediate and the reward is amazing, and it's one of the favorites of any of the books that I've taught. A Doll's House, a wonderful play, and then a couple of stories that touch on romance a little bit, Scarlet Pimpernel and Cyrano de Bergerac. So the junior high meets 3 times a week. Shorter writing assignments. The curriculum is more structured than the high school curriculum. There's also the kinds of questions there's a lot more setup that I'm doing, and maybe a little bit more directed discussion, while the high school is a little bit more free-flowing. All right, any questions there about what to expect for junior high? All right, and let me go up to the upper elementary, and all this annotation doesn't come off. All right, I'll set it up, and then Mrs. Miner, Rachel, if you want to add anything after I speak a little bit about it. So the upper elementary is going to be, this is going to be the 3rd year it's taught this particular curriculum, and the first 2 years I taught it, and now Mrs. Miner is going to teach it. And so many wonderful books in this group. The Book of Three is probably the one that will start the year off. Fantasy adventure. Oh man, I think students who are around still love and remember Gurgi with his crunchings and munchings. And stories of King Arthur are going to be fun. Hatchet by Gary Paulson is not European history related, but it's just a wonderful story about self-awareness and self-respect. Queen Eleanor. It's a historical drama. It's probably the only nonfiction book that's is part of literature at our house, but it's told in a novelized way. From the Mixed-Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler is a wonderful, subtle story that touches on something that you might not think of as important for a 5th or 6th grader, but the idea of personal identity and who are you in relation to other people? What makes you you? And that story is amazing at having students think about that and seeing the importance of reflecting on that. And The Secret Garden is just an amazing story about finding meaning, finding values to pursue. So this is the beginning. Last year, Mrs. Miner added a couple. I'm anticipating maybe there might be another 1 or 2 added this year. So this is the core, and there might be more. Rachel, would you like to add anything?
These are all books that I've read before several times and I'm familiar with. I'm especially looking forward to the Book of 3 because this year the class of 6 boys absolutely adored the first 2 lives of Lucas Kasha, which, like I said, we have just finished, and it looks like it's going to win for favorite book of the year. So it was written by Lloyd Alexander. I'm pretty darn sure that the Book of 3 is going to be one of these really just delightful experiences and a great way to start the year. And yeah, there's a lot of goodness when I was looking in these, especially Secret Garden. There's a lot of really powerful moments there. So I think it's going to be a great year.
All right, great. Thanks, Rachel. There's a King Kasha shout out. And then Luke, you've got an interesting question. You're asking, what about Miracle Worker and Inherit the Wind for novelized nonfiction? So yes, those are, both of those, Miracle Worker and Inherit the Wind, are based on historical events and true stories. I think the distinction of Queen Eleanor is that what you're presented with in the story is all factual, while what you're presented with the Miracle Worker and Inherit the Wind is there's a lot more liberty taken in the dramatization of the scenes. So there's nothing that you can point to in Queen Eleanor that is not based on historical documentation. So that would be the difference. All right. Now, any questions about upper elementary? Okay. So what's new? And the first thing that's new is Zoom. So for the past 6 years, we've been using WizIQ, and that has been a wonderful tool. We've had our frustrations with it, and from the few times that I've been looking at different platforms, and I think the technology is finally catching up, that it's something that's simple, that's very accessible, like Zoom, is now made available. So from your experience right now online, I don't think you're seeing any glitches or any issues with the sound, which is something that would routinely happen with IQ. So it's going to be the same basic. I think I need to get used to a lot of the things, like obviously the notation devices and so forth. And there'll still be recordings for all the courses, though I've got to figure out a particular plan for that, for how to handle the recordings, and where they'll be accessed and exactly what's going to happen with that. But I'm foreseeing no change, but rather an improvement on the online platform. All right, and then Wendy, Henry, and White, you're saying that the video and sound have been excellent. And then Luke, your camera's actually frozen right now. Okay. All right. How about that for irony? Okay. Now, another bit of a change for what's going to be new is I used to offer writing workshops, and having just given some impromptu tutorial sessions to the high school students, I'm realizing how much I miss the writing workshops. The writing workshops were an opportunity to have a little bit more in-depth discussion on the book, where I spent a little bit more one-on-one time, and sometimes in the writing workshops, I'd take 10 minutes, 15 minutes to speak to each student individually. And that's something that I would like to pick up again, not the writing workshops, but the speaking individually to students. I'd like to pick that up again, especially with the high school and maybe the junior high. So what I'm envisioning is for the high school students, so there'll be 1 week where we would not have classes, but instead have a 45-minute tutorial session, me with each individual student during that week. And we might do 2 or 3 of those. And I think what would happen, it would come between books. So we do a first book of the year, Jane Eyre, and then after Jane Eyre, there would be some writing assignment, and then I would meet with each student individually for 40, 45 minutes, and maybe do that 2 or 3 times over the year. And then depending on the class size for junior high, that might be something I might want to experiment with as well for the junior high, especially with a particular project or writing assignment that we do. All right. Now, next up with what's new. So schedule. Slightly new and some questions. So let me show you what we have down for the schedule for next year. So the upper elementary schedule is going to be the schedule that we ended with this year. So there was a change halfway through the year in the upper elementary schedule. So the upper elementary schedule is going to be 2 to 2:40 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:40 a.m. Pacific Time. So that will be on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The junior high schedule doesn't change the same. And then the high school schedule, this past year we did it Monday and Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And that's something that we might keep or we might change. We might keep or we might change. Okay. And so I think that's going to depend on the response of those who are in the high school. I think my vote is going to be to either keep it or to make it Tuesday and Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. But that's something I'm going to discuss with those who are returning for high school or those who are going from junior high to high school, and make sure that I can accommodate you, and then we'll set a time. Okay, and let's see. Hi, Kathy, welcome aboard. And just to answer your question there, Kathy, you're asking, so Mrs. Miner, Rachel Miner, who taught the upper elementary this past year, I'm very happy to have her back again this year to teach the upper elementary again for next year. And then let's see, any questions about the schedule or schedule discussion? Okay. All right. One more thing that's going to be new is that I'm going to raise the prices for literature at our house by $10 in a couple of days. And just things are a little bit more expensive. And so I think we've had the same $75 a month for the past 2 years. So it's time that I raise the price, but not yet because I want to grandfather anybody in, or if you're if you're hearing about Literature House and you want to sign up, I'm making it kind of a little bit of an incentive to sign up sooner rather than later. So if you want to get in tomorrow registration, then that will be your monthly payment. And then after that, sorry, May 17th, the monthly payment goes up by $10. Okay. All right. Now, questions. And then I see another question here. Is that you, Jenny? From Indul Zara? And so the
Yes,
question is...
sorry, I'm multitasking, so I was on mute.
Okay, no worries. No, just making sure I was identifying you correctly. So the
Yes.
question is, how do I handle or encourage kids who are shy and don't like to participate? Okay, great question. So there are several ways. One thing I'm going to think about a little bit more is when in WizIQ, I was the only one on video, and I liked that. The teacher was the only one, the instructor was the only one on video, and then could bring up the students on video whenever there was a special occasion, like reciting poem or some other, they need to show off their dog, whatever it was. So there are multiple ways of interacting. One is by audio, which is one of the main ways, but also the primary way of interacting is going to be through the chat. And through the chat, you're a little bit more anonymous, and I think a lot of students feel comfortable doing that. And then two more ways. The third way is by video, of course, and then the fourth way is just simply quick responses. So because it's an online format, and typically I haven't had students on video, so I can't read body language and so forth, we've used the chat as a way for staying in touch and staying in the loop. So just simply things like raising the hand, or if I ask a question, I ask students to share whether they're thinking about it. So just type in HMMM, or IDK. So the chat allows for a level of anonymity that I think draws out shyer students. Another way in which we encourage participation is we do a lot of, highlights and confusions. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, having the students feel free to share anonymously their thoughts about the work. So at the beginning of each class, it's all the students have an opportunity to just put down whatever they reacted to, whatever they liked, whatever they're confused by from the previous night's reading. And that helps with the instructor's understanding of what the students got from the reading, what touched them, and sometimes it forms the basis for a lot of discussion of the class. But that's often anonymous unless the student wants to announce themselves. Or for the writing assignments, for example, we share those in class with each other. But the way we share those in class is they're sent to me beforehand, and then I post them anonymously, and then students read them out loud. Not the student who wrote it, unless they want to, but then that's a way of having your work shared and not feeling like you're exposed. And then I think one more way, just in the way that we handle discussions, is we care a lot about what the students are saying and thinking. And so we want to hear what they have to say, and we want to often ask follow-up questions. And I think Mrs. Miner and I, we're both sincere in this interest, and I think that's a way of bringing the student out and having them share something and making them share sometimes very personal, emotional responses to things. All right, does that help, Jenny? Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Either pedagogy or what we did over the course of the year or procedure or plans for next year? All right. So, let's see, just one more under the wire, one more question. What kind of work is there outside of class for upper elementary? Okay. All right, great question. So the primary work is the reading assignments, and 15 pages, about 10 to 20 pages of reading between classes, and then an occasional writing assignment. Mrs. Miner, do you want to share any more about how you've done the writing assignments or outside work expectations? Okay. Oh, let's see. I don't know, Rachel, if you heard me or not. Oh, and let's see. There's a little bit of. Okay, so Rachel, if you get back or you hear me, let me know. But just in general, that's it. Occasional assignments. Oh, computer stuck. Sorry, that's not. That's not fun. All right, you bet, Jenny. Thank you. Let me try unmuting you. Yeah, I can't unmute you. Now, there we go. There we go.
Bizarre.
There we go.
I can't put my video on and I can't unmute myself for whatever reason. Yeah, I think you covered it. Certainly later in the year, sometimes we get more than 20 pages, but it's in books that are fast reads, and ones where we're checking the pace with the students and that it's going smoothly. There is sometimes poetry memorization, but it's usually like one stanza if it's a longer poem. It's not a huge thing. And the writing assignments are usually roughly a paragraph. I mean, we did do the write your own myth, but most of those were still, they had a lot of time, and I think they were maybe 3 to 4 paragraphs, and some of them were still just one. So most of it, yeah, is the reading, and then there are these assignments, which usually we also have decreased reading when we have assignments, so that we keep the pace not too much.
All right, great. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, I think that's it. If you have follow-up questions, email me. There will be a recording. I'll be sending that out. If you missed the first part of the open house and want to see all of it, I'll be happy to make that available to you. But thank you all. It's been a wonderful year, and I especially want to thank Steve and Rachel for all their help, and Rachel for an amazing upper elementary class. And I'm excited to be working with you again next year. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.